What's up guys, my name's Brandon and today Apple released iOS 13.2.2 just 2 days after the release of iOS 13.3 Beta 1 and just 1 week after the last public release, which was iOS 13.2. And we did also get iPadOS 13.2.2 for iPad users. So of course, in this video today, we're going to be covering what's new and what's changed in this update, along with the bug fixes, the battery life, the performance, and more. So let's not waste any time. Let's just go ahead and get straight into this. So you can see here the update was pretty small. It came in at about 588 megabytes here on my iPhone 11 Pro, which was coming from the last public release, iOS 13.2. That size, of course, though, will vary depending on your device and the version you are coming from. So let's go ahead into our settings and check out the build number for this update. You can see there 13.2.2. Build number is 17B102. And down at the bottom, you can see we do also have a modem firmware update with this update. We now have a modem firmware of 1.02.18. So if you were having any kind of cell connectivity or LTE issues, those could be solved in this update. There are also some noted changes as well that could help with cell connectivity, and we'll get to that here in a second. So now what's actually new and what's changed here in iOS 13.2.2? And the number one thing, the biggest reason this update was pushed out was to fix the RAM management issues. And I've talked about this numerous times in numerous videos. I'm pretty sure everybody here on YouTube and multiple articles, multiple media outlets have talked about this, but the RAM management on iOS 13.2 was terrible. And what I mean by RAM management is basically when you went into an application, say for instance YouTube, you're watching a YouTube video, you got a text message, so you went out and went into your messages and started responding to that text, or you went into Safari and looked up something and you wanted to come back to that YouTube video. Well, when you went back to YouTube, the video wouldn't be there. You would have to go back and go to your history tab and start watching it over again. And it was the same deal for something like Safari. If you were in Safari and you were reading, say you were at a certain spot in the article and you went out to respond to a text message, or you went out to look at something in your notes or something like that, when you would come back to Safari, that tab would just reload and it would start you back up at the very top of the page. And you have to go back down and find where you were at again and things like that. So it was very bad. It was very aggressive with killing applications in the background, iOS 13.2 was, but now iOS 13.2.2 fixes that issue. And if you're on the beta program, iOS 13.3.3, which was just released a couple days ago, did slightly fix this issue. It did not completely fix it because I still noticed it happening from time to time. It seemed to be a little bit suppressed, but hopefully iOS 13.2.2, this update fixes it completely and for good. And it's good that Apple listened to us because this was pretty major. Again, a lot of YouTubers did make videos on this, myself included. Multiple outlets picked it up as well. So it's good to see that Apple did listen to us and push out an update a week later. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that it took a full week for them to push this update for such a major bug. But I am happy to say that the RAM management issue has been fixed in 13.2.2, and just hearing that alone should be enough for you guys to run to your device and start updating immediately. But if that wasn't enough, there are also some other changes here in iOS 13.2.2 that do make some pretty major differences. And the first one being, actually there's two of them that address LTE and cell connectivity issues. So you can see here the first one says, resolves an issue where iPhone may temporarily lose cellular service after a phone call. So basically, if you made a phone call and you hung up, you would lose service for a brief second after that phone call. As a brief second as in like 10 seconds. It happened to me a couple times. I know multiple people have talked to me about this over on Twitter and Instagram. I've received DMs about this. That's finally been fixed here. I believe that went back not just in 13.2. I believe that was an issue starting with 13.1.2. So now 13.2.2 does fix that issue. And then you can see the one right below that says addresses an issue where cellular data may temporarily not be available. So pretty much if you had an issue where you just had no signal at all, that's been fixed here in iOS 13.2.2. I can't think of a time off the top of my head in iOS 13.2 where that actually happened. I don't think I actually lost signal fully at all in 13.2, but if you did have that issue, it seems that that has been addressed here with this latest update. And right below that, you can see there are a few other very specific issues that have been fixed in this update. The first one being fixes an issue that caused replies to S/MME encrypted email messages between Exchange accounts to be unreadable. So it seems that there have been a lot of issues with Exchange and just mail in general in iOS 13. So it seems that Apple is just slowly starting to fix all kinds of issues and hopefully solve all the issues with the mail application. So if you were having issues with Exchange and things like that being unreadable, that's been fixed. You can see the next one right there addresses an issue where using Kerberos single sign-on service in Safari may present an authentication prompt. And then the final one down there resolves an issue where charging may be interrupted on YubiKey Lightning powered accessories. Now going back to the cell connectivity issues, I did notice in iOS 13.2, I had multiple instances of cell connectivity issues, and it only started happening really within the past week. So I don't know if that's just an anomaly, if it just started happening recently to me and then this update came out. I don't know, but I did have issues where I would get like call failed. Basically, anytime I made a phone call or started to receive a phone call on my daily driver right here, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, it would just say call failed. I would receive calls, I would be able to receive calls and be able to make calls outgoing, but if I made the call outgoing and the other person picked up the phone, it would immediately say call failed. Or if somebody called me, right when I answered the phone, it would say call failed. So it was really weird, and I fixed this by toggling on and off airplane mode. One time that didn't even fix it, so I had to put my SIM card in my Pixel 4, and it worked on the Pixel. Then I put it back in the iPhone, and then it started working again. And again, I only had this issue with iOS 13.2, so I hope that this latest update fixes that issue and that I don't get any more of those call failed notices, because that was extremely annoying. And I will keep you guys posted on that as well. I will be making a follow-up video on iOS 13.2.2 just to tell you guys if it has been fully fixed or not. Same with the RAM management as well, because it's easy for Apple to just say it's been fixed, but it's another thing for me to actually be testing it out in real world scenarios and telling you guys that it's fixed. So stay on the lookout for that. Now, in terms of battery life, I would assume that iOS 13.2.2 would be exactly the same as 13.2. If anything though, it could have better battery life due to the applications not having to completely reload in the background due to that RAM management issue that we had in iOS 13.2. So that could lead to better battery life. I see no world where iOS 13.2.2 makes battery life worse. So I would definitely not be worried about losing battery life or getting worse battery life on this latest update. Now, as for performance, again, you will probably notice better performance overall just due to the applications not being killed off so easily and frequently in the background. I think that this update will make multitasking useful again, and you won't have to worry so much about losing your progress in an application or in Safari when you're filling out like a form. When it reloads, you have to resubmit the form and things like that. You won't have to worry about that near as much in this latest update. So for that reason alone, I think performance will be noticeably better in terms of RAM management and things like that. But overall performance, like opening up applications and things like that, won't be any faster in this update than it was in 13.2. So now, should you update to iOS 13.2.2? And I say absolutely, you should definitely update. The RAM management issue was one of the worst bugs and issues I've really ever seen on iOS and iPadOS, and I'm honestly surprised that it took Apple over a week to release a fix for this. And the reason that this issue was so bad was because it almost completely ruined multitasking on iOS, and it just made your workflows far less productive than on previous versions of iOS and iPadOS. And it was especially noticeable on iPad, like iPadOS, because I use my iPad Pro here, my 2018 iPad Pro, for a lot of work. I do a lot of work stuff. I'll have multiple windows, multiple instances of applications opened up, and the RAM management issues made iOS 13.2 on the iPad pretty much unusable. I had to stop using my iPad and just use my computer for work-related things because it just got so frustrating after time. So this update should bring back the true multitasking and, get work done feel to my iPad Pro, and I should be able to start using this again as a workhorse and as, something I use for work, and, being able to open up multiple applications, multiple instances of that same application, and not have to worry about losing progress or the application relaunching and things like that. Now, also, of course, if you have any kind of LTE or cell connectivity issues on your phone right now, you should definitely update to iOS 13.2.2 to fix that issue. Now, I know that some people are on iOS 13.3 beta 1 right now, and if you are on iOS 13.3 beta, you don't need to downgrade, since these same changes that you find in 13.2.2 will be in 13.3, probably in the next beta, probably in 13.3 beta 2. So I would not downgrade just to get, the RAM management issues fixed, because that will be coming to the next beta most likely of iOS 13.3. And anyways, 13.3 beta 1 pretty much has, a good fix at least a semi-fix for the RAM management issue. So definitely don't downgrade. You will get the fixes in the next beta or two, and you also get some additional changes and features, so there's just no point in downgrading. And as for the iPad, iPadOS 13.2.2 is exactly the same as iOS 13.2.2. Everything is exactly the same. The only thing that's not included in the changelog on the iPad are the cell connectivity issues. So I guess maybe because I only have a Wi-Fi model, maybe if you have the cellular model of the iPad, it will show that, but there's nothing that stands out that's different in the iPad version versus the iOS version. So anyways, guys, there you have it. That is iOS 13.2.2. You should definitely go ahead and update as soon as possible to fix the very annoying RAM management issue, cell connectivity issues, and things like that. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And of course, make sure you guys do subscribe so you don't miss the next time an important iOS update is released. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.